La. Hi, I'm Evie, and this is She Tells of Horror. Once a week, I will be reading you a creepy little short story or poem and giving you little tidbits about it. And that's pretty much what I'm doing today. The first story I am going to read is kind of in preparation for the movie that's about to come out. So I know a few people that are around my age range, which is like late 20s, or actually late 20s to about late 30s, have possibly read these books. And if you haven't, you have to go look for them. It's important. Very important. So these are the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark series. There's a movie in August coming out that is produced, I think, by Guillermo del Toro. And these books have actually kind of shaped my childhood in the way of me falling in love with horror stories, or horror in general. I mean, parents don't do this, ever, but I fell in love with horror when I was like 4 years old. I started watching horror movies around that age, which, no, again, don't do that, parents. I mean, unless, you want them to be raised like me, all like wearing black and living in existential dread. Don't do it. So, these books actually, they were these little short stories, very simple and kind of to the point. They had they had a slow rise, a really good and hefty middle, and a nice creepy ending. And when you read them, you kind of, as a kid, when you read them, I'm like, oh, this is creepy. But what made these books was actually the illustrations. And right now, I'm a little on the crappy side with video and visuals, so bear with me. I'm going to try to show you some stuff. So before that, the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is actually a series of books. It's in 3 parts. The first is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. The second one is More Stories to Tell. More Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And the third one is Scary Stories 3, More Stories to Chill Your Bones. So they, I think it was from the span of 1981 to about 1991 that they were created. And Stephen Gammell is the artist, and Alvin Schwartz was the one that wrote the stories. So, like I said, these stories were accompanied by this artwork that was just so creepy and gory, and I think that artwork helped those little simple, scary short stories to be that much more amplified and that much more nightmarish for you. These stories actually were challenged, or I don't know what's called, like challenged books or banned books. These books were actually banned in some places because of how scary and horrific the artwork was. And they said, oh, the stories were really bad too, but I feel like if you take away Stephen Gammell, Scary Stories would be so plain and so safe. And to prove a point, actually, HarperCollins re-released Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark for their 30th anniversary in 2011, and they had a Brett Hellenquist, who actually does the series of Fortunate Events. Did I just say series of Fortunate? Unfortunate. Series of Unfortunate Events. And this is nothing against Brett Hellenquist. I think his artwork is amazing. I've seen it, and it's beautiful. It really is. But he's not Stephen Gammell, and he just, the stark contrast of both these artworks is mind-blowing. You don't feel the fear when you see it. You don't feel that creep out. You just go, oh, ooh, that's scary. And that's it. But So I think that they actually reverted back to the old drawings a few years later because it wasn't as successful for the 30th anniversary. So now we have our creepy Crowleys back, and I'm so happy because I love, love, love Alvin Schwartz and Stephen Gamble. That dynamic duo. Nothing else out there I think compares. Name a better duo. Just write it down there somewhere. I don't know. So I'm going to start reading one of my favorite stories. It's actually, I think, one of the most popular ones. You actually will see the picture on the trailer or the poster for Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. So this is Harold. When it got hot in the valley, Thomas and Alfred drove their cows up to a cool green pasture in the mountains to graze. Usually, they stayed there with the cows for 2 months. Then they brought them down to the valley again. The work was easy enough, but oh, was it boring. All day the two men tended to their cows. At night, they went back to the tiny hut where they lived. They ate supper and worked in the garden and went to sleep. It was always the same. Then Thomas had an idea that changed everything. "Let's make a doll the size of a man," he said. "It would be fun to make, and we could put it in the garden to scare away the birds." "It should look like Harold," Alfred said. Harold was a farmer they both hated. They made the doll out of old sacks stuffed with straw. They gave it a pointy nose like Harold's and tiny little eyes like his. Then they added dark hair and a twisted frown. Of course, they also gave it Harold's name. Each morning on their way to the pasture, they tied Harold to a pole in the garden to scare away the birds. Each night they brought him inside so that he wouldn't get ruined if it rained. If they were feeling playful, they would talk to him. One of them might say, "How are the vegetables growing today, Harold?" And the other, making believe he was Harold, would answer in a crazy voice, "Very slowly." They both would laugh, but not Harold. Whenever something went wrong, they took it out on Harold. They would curse at him, even kick him or punch him. Sometimes one of them would take the food they were eating, which they both were sick of, and smear it on the doll's face. "How do you like that stew, Harold?" He would ask. "Well, you better eat it, or else." Then the two men would howl with laughter. One night, after Thomas had wiped Harold's face with food, Harold grunted. "Did you hear that?" Alfred asked. "It was Harold," Thomas said. "I was watching him when it happened. I can't believe it." "How could he grunt?" Alfred asked. "He's just a sack of straw. It's not possible." "Let's throw him in the fire," said Thomas, "and that will be that." "Let's not do anything stupid," said Alfred. "We don't know what's going on. When we move the cows down, we'll leave him behind. For now, let's just keep an eye on him." So they left Harold sitting in a corner of the hut. They didn't talk to him or put him outside anymore. Now and then the doll grunted, but that was all. After a few days, they decided there was nothing to be afraid of. Maybe a mouse or some insects has gotten inside Harold and were making those sounds. So Thomas and Alfred went back to their old ways. Each morning they would put Harold in the garden, and each night they brought him back into the hut. When they felt playful, they joked with him, and when they felt mean, they treated him as badly as ever. Then one night, Alfred noticed something that frightened him. "Harold's growing," he said. "I was thinking the same thing," Thomas said. "Maybe it's just our imagination," Alfred replied. "We have been up here on this mountain too long." The next morning, while they were eating, Harold stood up and walked out of the hut. He climbed up on the roof and trotted back and forth like a horse on its hind legs. All day and night he trotted like that. In the morning, Harold climbed down and stood in front of the corner of the pasture. The men had no idea what he would do next. They were afraid. They decided to take the cows down into the valley that same day. When they left, Harold was nowhere in sight. They felt as if they had escaped a great danger and began choking and singing. But when they had gone only a mile or two, they realized they had forgotten to bring the milking stools. Neither one wanted to go back for them, but the stools would cost a lot to replace. There really is nothing to be afraid of, they told one another. After all, what could a doll do? They drew straws to see which one would go back. It was Thomas. I'll catch up with you, he said, and Alfred walked away on toward the valley. When Alfred came to a rise in the path, he looked back for Thomas. He did not see him anywhere, but he did see Harold. The doll was on the roof of the hut again, and as Alfred watched, Harold kneeled and stretched out a bloody skin to dry in the sun. And that was the story of Harold, from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, by Alvin Schwartz, and the art by Stephen Gamble. So, I don't know if this will show up well, but this is kind of what Harold looks like. And if you look for the movie poster for Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which is going to be out this August, you will see a more, I guess, colorful, lively version of the same drawing. So let me see if I can get it to work and show you how creepy this is. One. That's Harold. So cool, right? Look how fucking creepy is that? And like this is where they lived. That's Alfred and Thomas and their little creepy hut. So that's a little bit of imagery to go with this creepy story. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today. I hope you all enjoyed this creepy tale, and I hope you come back soon. There's a like button, there's a subscribe button, there's a notify button. Do all the things that you want to do. Again, I will tell everybody this all the time. If you have any short stories or creepy poetry that you would love to contribute, by all means send it to me. SheTellsOfHorror@gmail.com. It'll also be in the description. And please let me know what you want me to read next. If you have any preferences, I'd be more than happy to read any creepy stuff. I'm kind of open to pretty much anything except scat. So I hope everyone has a good night and a good fright.